Well, as promised, it's 7:02. We got 44 people joined so far, so we got a full house to talk with. I'm excited to be here with you. So again, this session is Path to Victory, and it is on how to run for local office in 2024. I'm Rob Booth. I'm your host for this evening. And in my day life, I am the head of field and mobilization at Good Party. My colleague Jared's going to tell you all about Good Party, who is one of the co-sponsors for this event. We're also running this event with our friends at Forward Party. So I'd like to introduce Jared Alper from Good Party and Rich Horner from Forward Party. And just to kind of dive into it right off the bat, Jared, tell us about your work with Good Party, and then we'll pass the mic over to Rich to do the same.
Sure, Rob, and hey everyone, thank you for joining Rob, Rich, and myself this evening. We're thrilled that you guys were tuning in to learn a little bit about the work that we're doing and how running for local office can really make an enormous impact on communities around the country. And that really is a core focus of mine at Good Party. I'm Jared Alper, Good Party's political director. I have spent, like these two on the screen with me, my career in the political space, working to help make our democracy more functional. I originally, like I think a lot of people who are politically interested and active, got started from within the two-party system, trying to help elect better Democrats, better Republicans, folks who are inclined to sort of shake up the system from the inside. And what I found in trying to do that for campaigns, including races for the U.S. House and many state legislative campaigns across the country, that it's really challenging to try and change the system from the inside, because the incentives and the way that the system has been set up doesn't really allow people who are coming in with good intentions to operate freely and challenge the status quo. And so back in 2017, I had my moment of breaking away. I've been working with independent candidates since then, and found Good Party after running several races for offices like the U.S. Senate. Worked to help combine forces and figure out a solution to the challenges that are unique when you run for office without the support of a major political party like the Democrats and the Republicans in your corner. And so my work is focused on putting the tools the Good Party is developing in the hands of candidates across the country who are running, but especially candidates who are running for offices like city council and school board across the country, help them understand what we're doing and how to make use of the tools that we're building, but also help support them in their campaigns and even hear from them the experiences and challenges that they're running into, so that our team and the partnerships that we're building with good folks like the Forward Party can build and scale this alternative mission to help provide people better competitive alternatives to the two-party system that we've got so far.
Great. And how about you, Rich?
Yes, I'm here representing the Forward Party. And before we get started, Jared and Rob, thank you very much for this collaboration. This was great. Like Rob and Jared, I've been involved in electoral politics for 25 years, and I've come up through the system and the two-party system. I've been a consultant for the Democratic candidates, again, for 25 years. I was the political director of the New York State Democratic Committee. I understand party organizations. I understand candidates. As Jared said, I had my breaking moment in 2018 when I worked for a candidate for governor of the state of New York under the Serve America movement, which is a third party, which eventually became one of the three pillars of the Forward Party back in 2019. And since then, I've been in sort of the pro-democracy space, trying to elect candidates, both independents, forwardists, and people that are sort of center leading throughout the country.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into the programming that we put together for everyone today. As a couple of just rules of order and ways that you can interact with us throughout the call. Obviously, the chat is open for you guys to drop in feedback and sort of notes. There's also a Q&A function, and that will kind of build a rolling block of questions that we can answer both throughout the presentation, but also we're going to hold a dedicated amount of time. We'll stay on the call with you guys for as long as you want, answering questions towards the end of it. So feel free to begin asking questions throughout. And in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to start by talking through the importance of these local elections. You know, both organizations have a focus on local elections. We're going to talk about the role of independents in particular in local government. We're going to give you the tools to decide what to run for. We're going to talk through a checklist for running for office. We're going to talk through what launching a campaign and really building a momentum for your campaign looks like. And we're going to talk all the way through the get out the vote phases and the voter contact that helps to win campaigns. So a lot to cover over the course of this call. And without any more buildup, I'll let us kind of jump into it. Starting with the importance of local elections. It's central to both organizations' strategies. And yeah, I would love, I'll tee up the same question of both of you. First, Jared, why are local offices so important to Good Party and Good Party's strategy? And then same question to Rich after that.
And
forward, of course.
I'll share my screen as well, because we presented, the two of us, some materials that I think are helpful in guiding this conversation. But it is, local elections are the sort of centerpiece of the strategy for both of our organizations. And I think that part of the reason is just first and foremost because of volume. I know folks are drawn to the top of the ticket elections, presidential elections, congressional elections. It's oftentimes what gets the most coverage. But if you look at this graphic, you can see that only 0.1% of the elections that are on your ballot are those sort of shiny object elections that are important, but they oftentimes aren't focused on the bread and butter issues that I think folks talk about when they're at their kitchen table to begin with, right? And aside from this, these local elections are oftentimes the elections that not only make the largest single impact in the lives of people around the country at the community level, but they're oftentimes the elections that maybe because the spotlight isn't shining so brightly on, a lot of folks don't even step up and run for them. So you're seeing a situation where over 70% of these elections are oftentimes totally uncontested, which perpetuates a problem, right? Meaning that there's not new energy, not new life, not new blood, and no new ideas coming into these local elected positions, but also that it creates an opportunity. If someone were to step up, provided resources and support and training, there are real opportunities to take a lot of swings at the pitch and help get people elected into really consequential positions of service. Understanding that, you know, look, there's 350,000 of these races that are uncontested that are seeing public servants get elected essentially by default. So that's a huge opportunity to shake up the system and do it in a way that I think can build and scale a movement on top of it, where maybe you are electing people who will one day become those members of Congress or governors or you know, even the president of the United States one day.
Absolutely agree, Jared. That's great in the sense that we're here at the Forward Party, we like to, we've been trying to recruit local citizens in their small communities to sort of get involved in politics, like Jared just said, right? 350,000 races uncontested. When you run for local office, right, that's where the heart and soul of what government does, right? It's the filling the potholes, it's the police, it's the fire, it's the things that you learn about in civics lessons, right? That's where it's really happening. The stuff that's happening in DC or even in the state capitol are a little bit more distant. So I think that's a priority for us, right? And the thing that I think is most important about these local races and the school board races is the ability to win these races is a lot easier, right? The turnout's smaller, the electorate's smaller. You can be a member of the community and know a large section of the electorate and really be able to do electioneering far easier than running statewide or for a congressional race when there's 500,000 registered voters, right?
Oftentimes, when I think about local elections, especially in the context of independence, I think about this uncontested number. And what makes it so attractive to me is I think the hardest piece of inertia oftentimes for an independent to overcome is this idea of being a spoiler. So the idea that there's 350,000 races where they'd be in head-to-head races, that seems like a real opportunity to build momentum and put some wins on the board without that spoiler effect or the vote splitting argument even being present, let alone valid. So that piece is there. And then the other thing that kind of pops top of mind to me is the idea of all politics ultimately being local. You know, there's that old phrase that goes back to, I think, 1932, all politics is local. And the way that the lessons that you learn in these local elections, how well they translate at scale. I think that there are very few people, I can think of maybe one off the top of my head who decide to run for president as their first office to be elected to, right? It's a heck of an outlier with that. So being able to start your political career locally, especially, is a great place to start. So any final thoughts on the sort of the strategy or why our organizations focus on local before we talk about the role of independence?
Go ahead, Rob. Oh, sorry, Rich.
I think that for the Forward Party, the sort of, we're trying to build something from the grassroots level, from the ground up, and I think that being in the local communities and these local elections will allow us to start building the foundation of what a long-term viable third party will look like. And as Rob said, right, and Jared said, it may not be this year that we win a lot of statewide seats, but it's the local seats that eventually go on to be your mayors, and your mayors go on to be your state senators, and so on. So we see it as the foundation process of the new organization that we're trying to build nationally.
I think the narrative of having these hundreds of thousands of seats, not only contested but won, breathes important life into the space, right? I think, Rob, you touched on it. The absent significant pushback, and it takes a lot to cut through the noise that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party really try and spin out there and make people feel like independent candidates, the role that they play in the ecosystem is to be spoilers or wasted vote sort of candidates. And by running and competing locally and disproving that by scaling and winning a lot of elections and getting good people into service, you chip away at that idea and you inspire people and help them understand that there's not just a credible plan behind this thing strategically, but it's also a hopeful one. It's a vision that disputes, I think, something that people want to believe, but haven't heard a lot of pushback with action that helps convince them that it's not just a nice thought, but it's actually a credible thing to believe in.
Mm-hmm. I want to elevate something that I'm seeing in the chat here. Michael points out that while discussing the number of local races that are out there that are unopposed, there are also a number of offices that are appointed, especially when there's a vacant elected position. And he points out that he was actually appointed himself after simply doing some volunteering, right? So there are all these different angles at local office. I want us to be able to pivot into talking about the importance of independence and the role of independence in local government. So either or, Rich or Jared, whoever wants to sort of tackle this first, feel free to jump in. But what is your view on the sort of role of independence and what their place is in the puzzle of local government?
Look, I think the independent voters, is that what you're saying, Rob? Is that the question? Yes. I think the way democracy, the partisanship and the polarization, especially the negative polarization that exists today, has been driving more and more people to become independent, to become unaffiliated voters, right? They want to see a better way to, fix the light bulb, right? As I like to say, right? Shouldn't be a red way, there shouldn't be a blue way, just fix the light bulb. And I think with the negative partisanship that exists today, more and more people are attending that. And in 2004, I think the number was 31% nationally considered themselves independents. Now it's almost at 49%, right? So more and more people are sort of turning away from the two-party system, which allows us as the Forward Party and as you all who want to become candidates to have a base of voters that are not tied to that sort of branding of being either red or blue.
Yeah, I would echo that 100%, Rich. And I think that to be independent or to break away from one of the two major political parties and find a home elsewhere, and then running for office, you're inherently bringing something different to the table than what most communities in this country are experiencing, right? When people, I think, describe themselves as independent, they are saying that I don't feel at home within sort of the orthodoxy of ideas. that exist within the red party or the blue party. And so they're taking different perspectives, diverse perspectives, maybe a blend of the best of each party, right? I think that there are plenty of people who might agree with more conservative ideas or more progressive ideas, depending on the issue, or are moderate, libertarian, green, whatever sort of philosophy that you adhere to. And you don't really find a voice because the parties demand so much from their candidates and their elected officials to toe the line. And so for independent candidates to break through and become people-powered, public servants who can bring their own ideas into government, what you're going to see is ideas that are also independent and aren't shackled down by partisanship and by people who are saying you have to toe our line or you can't be a part of our team anymore. And that, for traditional political people, is something to consider, right? If you are a Democrat or Republican and you lose the support of the party, that can be a career-ending decision, and many people don't make that decision.
So from what I'm hearing, there's certainly a lot of opportunity at the local level, and there's obvious impact that can be driven by independents bringing fresh perspective to these roles. How can the folks on this call who are thinking about running for office find and sort of pick the right roles for them, place to lean in?
Well, if you are in that position and you are considering a run for office and maybe you are unsure of the exact position that might be of the highest and best use for your skills and your interests, boy, do we have a tool for you. And so a plug for the company here, but I'll share my screen and show you exactly how the tools that you will hear referenced on this call would work. So let's say you're planning on running for office. I'd encourage you to visit goodparty.org and start this journey. And what you'll see when you go through this flow that we've built for people like you on this call, first and foremost, you tell us a little bit about yourself and we can help you understand the opportunities that are available. Answer a couple of questions: who you are, if you're already running, or if you're just exploring a run for office or thinking seriously about a run but haven't made the firm decision yet. If you have a political affiliation, whether that's independent, libertarian, forward, or any of the other parties that exist, you can't select Democrat and you can't select Republican. That's just the catch for our organization. Let's say I'm running within the forward party. I hit next, and I know where I live, right? I plug in my zip code. We've actually built this tool so that you can see all of the different offices that are on your ballot and even the year in which those elections will come up. You can sort them by the level of service, whether you want to run locally or for county office or for state office. And let's say I'm interested in the state legislature. And you can even learn a little bit about these positions as you go through this process. I often encourage candidates when they are exploring offices, you can window shop, but you also have to think through what is it that your mission is in considering running for office? What's the why that has driven you to even consider exploring in the first place? Oftentimes that's geared towards a problem that you're interested in solving. You may even think, well, what are my skills, right? Not all offices are the same. Some are more, about collaborating with other people and trying to essentially legislate and write new rules to solve problems that exist in the community. Others are more executive. If you think of positions like governor or mayor, where your job is to sign and enforce law. And so all of these opportunities we can make available to you. And then hopefully, in addition to the tools, there are resources online. There are groups like the Forward Party and like ours who can help you navigate this space by understanding a little bit more about the offices that are available to you. And you'll be able to make the decision on the office that you're interested in running for with confidence that you've done your homework and feel really good about the journey you're about to get started on.
I'm sort of aware that running as an independent oftentimes can be perceived as having additional baggage to overcome. Some states it's harder to get on the ballot. Some states it costs more money. And certainly there are limited resources available to your campaign versus the resources that a lot of folks inherit from the parties. And I'd love for each of you, maybe starting with Forward Party, to talk about what level of support you provide to candidates to help even the playing field. And Jared, that tool is great, but what else is available to help support the people who take the brave step, beyond just looking through the Finder to decide that, yeah, I want to run for office?
Well, I'll take that from the forward party. And first I want to say that, having done this for 25 years, anybody that desires to put their name on the ballot is always one step ahead of me. And it's so awesome to see that from anybody. And that's great. As I said forward, we're trying to build a third party movement from the ground up. So what we're offering is sort of the support of what we're building, right? We have 293,000 different members across the country. We have a volunteer base of around 35,000, right? We have donor lists. We have a pretty decent, social media presence, right? And we have organized and affiliated in probably 38 states, and we have ballot access in 4 or 5 states as it exists now. So that you, again, to Rob's point, getting on the ballot is sometimes hard. So as we grow, we'll provide ballot access. If there's not ballot access, we'll support you, whatever line you are able to get on, whether it's an independent or your Democratic forwardist or Republican forwardist, right, or one of the independent party forwardists. But we're here to help you from sort of the grassroots ground up level. We feel that that's going to expand our volunteer base. It's going to expand our organization, and ideally where it's going to expand, help you win.
Love it. Oh, that's such a great answer. And Jared, how about what we're doing over at Good Party?
Yeah, so our value add is very much I think, in sync with what Rich and the team on the party building side is trying to do. And for us, our value prop as a technology platform is to build tech that helps scale and accelerate the work that parties are doing, that individual candidates are doing, and help empower people who are considering a run or who are actively running, right, to have access to the information and knowledge that they need to be able to navigate the space. And so you just saw the screen a moment ago. This is what it looked like in our platform when you complete the onboarding flow. And everyone who is exploring or is actively running gets access to a suite of resources that have been built by AI and trained by myself and Rob and others on our team to be able to ensure that candidates understand the experience of running for office and how to navigate that experience really effectively. Whether it's strategic, like how to answer a simple question, which is sometimes uncomfortable. Why are you running for office? Down to the strategy that you would need in order to be able to understand what success looks like on the campaign trail. And then a whole other suite of AI-based resources, like a campaign tool that'll help be essentially an assistant to candidates, whether they have a whole bunch of people behind them who are working on the campaign or they're sort of navigating the space without a whole lot of paid staff on their teams, which is very normal for smaller campaigns, as well as a campaign tracking tool that helps candidates manage their progress throughout the experience of running for office. So for us, we feel like in addition to the parties who are doing the work of building and scaling and recruiting candidates and helping develop the volunteer requirements and the people who are going to plug into these campaigns, we can support those efforts by making these free tools available to candidates and the people who are working on those campaigns to help them run, shoulder to shoulder with the infrastructure that the two major parties have already developed, and oftentimes they're giving to their candidates well into their campaigns.
Great. So I know that the next thing that we wanted to be able to talk through is a checklist for running for office. And so, Jared, I know you prepared some materials to share on that with Rich. Let's talk through it. What are sort of the essential things that you need before launching a campaign to be able to get into the fight?
I think I'll take that, and I think it's identifying where you want to run, right? Why you're going to run for that, and the current, and not to sidetrack with the story, but the current governor of the state of New York ran for local office primarily because she wanted a stoplight at a very bad intersection where a couple children were hurt and it kept repeatedly happening. So she ran for public office for that one reason. Right? This is, to put up a stoplight to save, stop car accidents and save children who are crossing the street there. Fast forward 25 years, she's the governor of the state of New York. But she identified what the problem was. She thought she wanted to run for local government, right? And that's really what you want to do. You want to be able to identify what you want to do and show the impact. What is the impact that you want to make on your local community? I think you got to understand every district is different. I've seen some people in the chat here talking about running for state office and Congress, right? So you got to understand what you're dealing with, right? As we said earlier, the number of independent voters is rising in a lot of different places. So, you may be able to find a district that has a lot of independents, right? You want to develop a campaign plan, and the Good Party has tools. We're always willing to help people create sort of the strategies of how to win your race or get out there and do what you need to do versus the tactics of getting it done, doing mail, doing door to door. I think we ran a local candidate for as a forwardist in Connecticut last year, and we created a campaign plan where he would go out and knock on doors every day, and got her friends and got her Christmas card list, and was able to pull off a big win up in Connecticut. Again, you got to create your message. You got to know what you want to talk about. Again, going back to that stoplight or pothole or whatever, if you're at the local level, what is it that you want to do to better your community? And what in this day of negative partisanship, where all you get is what people don't want, right? Or all the blame game, or right. I feel if you go out and I'm hopeful that the paradigm is not broken, where you can go out and tell someone you're going to do a good job and have them reward you if you do it, right? It's easy to identify the win number. If 1,000 people are going to vote, and you're in a first past the, that 50 people are going to turn out, 26 is your win number, right? Identify how many people you're going to need to sort of win that election. This works in smaller elections where you can identify or talk to or have friends talk to the exact number of people you would need to win an election, right? And who are these people? Are they independents? Are they neighbors? Are you a baseball coach? Are they all the families? Are you a local doctor? Or are you someone in the community that has a reach? Do you own your own shop? And you have this interaction with the community. So to know who you're dealing with. The biggest thing is creating a budget. Running for one of the largest downsides of running for a public office is raising money, right? So in a local race, again, the cost is a little cheaper than running for Congress, right? This is, there's a big difference in running in a district that, a city council race that's gonna, you're gonna need to raise $5,000 versus running for Congress where you're gonna have to raise 1.2 million. So you got to create a budget, figure out how you're gonna pay for it, figure out who's gonna be on your team. You got to develop a way to raise that money. You got to, in certain states, you got to know the law. That is very important. You want to follow your filing deadlines to the state or your local community so you don't get in trouble. Rob pointed it out earlier, the ballot access laws are different in every state and sometimes can be different in different communities. So you got to do the research on that. Then you want to launch your campaign. You want to do your campaigning. I think there is a GOTV section coming up, so I'll leave GOTV open. And the bottom line is you got to watch the clock. When you run for political office, you're always on a deadline. There is no extra innings. So you got to get to, election day in November, your primary day, or whatever the case may be. You're always working back from that day. So always calendar out from that Tuesday. So you know how much time you have left to get what you need to get done. It also helps with budgeting as well.
Excellent.
You want to jump?
Yeah, Jared, anything to add to this list? This is a great list here.
Yeah, Rich really covered it comprehensively. The piece of the addition I'd make is more process oriented, which is that I think when folks are excited and eager to run for office, and this checklist is a great resource of we do and try to help candidates using our tools to come up with some of this stuff, like what's your win number, your path to victory, your campaign plan. But it does require some research by the candidates, of course, as well. And the thing that we often tell candidates at this stage in their campaign, if you're really feeling eager to jump into a political run, is to take the time to go through this list. And it's not about pumping the brakes and not jumping in with both feet, but the time before a candidate launches their campaign is the most critical in any campaign that I've ever seen or been a part of. And it's important to manage the excitement by also doing the legwork, so that when you do launch a campaign, you know that you've checked all your boxes, you're setting yourself up for success, you know your plan, you know which direction you need to drive, you know which direction you're headed in, and you have all the information that you need to be able to just do the things once you've launched that a candidate needs to be focused on, which is meeting voters, raising support in all its various forms for your campaign, and empowering even the people who are volunteering or working with you to execute all of the different get out the vote tactics that we'll talk about in a little bit, so that you have success on election day.
Yeah, I think when I look at this list, it's easy to say, oh, this is pretty second nature to the three of us on this call as folks who have been around elections for most of our adult lives. But one of the things that through auditing a number of independent candidates and local elections kind of early into this project that I learned is that a lot of this is confusing on purpose. It's sort of elbows out. It's meant to keep people from running and to keep people from running successfully. And I think it's encouraging that there are groups like Good Party and the Forward Party who are coalescing resources, making it more accessible. You know, we oftentimes joke about trying to democratize democracy. And if you know, beyond this call, I would say if there's anyone who has questions about any of these individual checklist items, be sure to reach out. We want to be available to make running for office as easy as possible, whether you're running as a forward candidate or running as any other type of independent, and whether it's our tools at Good Party or the support of folks at the Forward Party, we want you to be able to make it through the sticky red tape. Because from my experience, being a good candidate and being a really great elected official, not always totally one-for-one skills. Sometimes the people who are best for the job also just happen to have to become really good at the other job, and that's being a candidate. And we want to help you with that. So let's pivot into talking about launching a campaign. We recently did a whole training on this single topic, a whole 90-minute training on launching a campaign. So I know it's something that Jared feels passionate about. And it's something that Rich has helped a lot of successful campaigns to do. But I want you guys to share some strategies on how to effectively launch a political campaign and build the momentum that is necessary to be able to sail your way into the final stages of the campaign.
Rich, I'll kick it to you. I think this is a list I know you put a lot of time into.
Again, you know, it is as simple as again. I don't want to use the stoplight or the is your excuse, but assume that, right, establish your brand, right. Governor Hochul was a mom who wanted to take care of the children in the community, right? What is it that you're going to do to better the community? Establish who that is, who you want to be, how you want the electorate to see you. You know, obviously you want to create, in today's day and age, you want to create the website, you want to create a social media presence, right? Any one that has nieces, nephews, or children could probably do it better than I could, right? So especially if you're running a first-time candidate, so you want to create a social media presence, again, just feeding in that brand. You want to do sort of a kickoff, and you want the community to know you're running, and it could be something, you know, as simple as a rally at a community organization, or like I said, if your brand was, I want more street stoplights up at a dangerous intersection, you can go announce your campaign right at that intersection. Right? You want the media to ask, why are you running? Well, because there's no stoplight at this intersection that keeps having car accidents and putting children at risk. Right? So you can be creative that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be a rally or an event or at a bar or a community center. You know, you work it around your issue. If you have a specific idea of what you want to fix, right? You want to engage the local press. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, you know, local press is getting harder and harder to find, but, you know, you should try to get into the papers of the local press or whatever, to sort of send out press releases and get people talking in the media about you. It's very hard sometimes at the local level or third-party candidate to get it, but the more you push, the more you can get press. You want to do your fundraising events. Fundraising is a beast unto itself, like I said earlier. It could be as simple as we ran a county legislator in a local race about a dozen years ago, right? And all they did was have $25 beer blast parties, right? Someone, you know, a bar sponsored it. gave her, free beer and we raised a couple $1,000 inviting the same 100 people to a beer blast every week. It doesn't have to be that simple, but it can be that, have a chicken barbecue, do something that's going to expand your base, right? Expand, that was the next thing, your volunteers, expand the people that want to be involved in your campaign. I say this all the time, volunteers who come in to help your campaign, whether they write postcards or they do phone calls or they, that they go door to door for you to tell people, the downstream effects of that is not only the work they're doing to help you, but the next time they're at the water cooler at their work, someone's going to ask them, what did you do last night? They're going to say, oh, I was out helping Rob's campaign. I was knocking on doors. I was putting stamps on envelopes, right? And it's a downstream effect because now you've created buzz because there's people actually trying to help you out. Again, using all the good party tools, which are phenomenal. The other thing to build momentum is sort of attend local events and festivals. And if you've got volunteers and you got budget, everyone should have, your shirt or your logo on it. The more you're seen within the community, the better it is. Parades are fantastic, right? And everyone's wearing the same color shirt and you're walking, waving, shaking hands to the people, and your volunteers are throwing candies to the kids, right? You're out there, people see you, they want to know. And if they don't know, you can engage with them. Try to get other people within the community to endorse your campaign, whether it's community leaders, organizations, someone that has some gravitas or someone that's in the community that can give you some sort of credibility, especially a first-time candidate, right? You want someone to give you the nod of support. I can't stress enough, candidates going door to door. The Good Party has tools that will help you out. Anybody, it's a lost art. If you, the candidate, is going knocking on doors, especially in smaller districts, asking people for your vote, it is very hard, even in today's negative partisanship, for someone to look at you in the right and be angry with you. You may get a few, but the most part is if you can convince a voter at the door that you can, fix the problem that you want to address in the community, and they give you their word, you've got them. It's a one-on-one thing that it cannot be stressed enough of the importance of actually interacting. Putting up signs don't vote, is what we would like to say in political campaigning, but the more you can get them out, the more people see your name, the more excitement and momentum people feel. And finally, be visible and be reachable. Be visible, be out there in the community, try to be everywhere. Try to, go to places that people wouldn't expect you to go. We'll go into enemy territory, so to speak. Let people see you, and be reachable, right? Via email. Have a second cell phone where you can give that out so someone can call you, especially at a local level when you don't have a campaign manager to call. People want to be able to call you, and again, the more community action and the more one-on-one time you can have with voters is worth much more than money can buy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Jared, do you want to jump?
Jared, if I can give you something focused to jump in on, one of the things that I know that we ran a training for our candidates on recently is the value and how to leverage endorsements. And endorsements are a tremendous way of showing momentum and building that momentum. Can you speak a little bit to how that might add to what's already a really great list here?
Yeah, I think leveraging endorsements, putting yourself out there to get in front of groups who can help build infrastructure and build excitement and buzz for your campaign is an important tactic. And it starts just with putting yourself out there as a candidate. Finding groups that are aligned with your mission and theory of why you're running for office, whether you are your focus or background as a business owner or a farmer. There are groups, real estate groups, organic fair trade groups. There are different political organizations that exist in communities across the country, and plenty of even individuals who are highly visible and highly engaged. And getting involved with these organizations, introducing yourself, putting yourself out there. If they have materials they ask candidates to participate in, whether it's surveys, our tools are being leveraged so that you can even help use AI to be able to fill out things like survey questionnaires. But being able to understand who are the players and the endorsement organizations in your community that have a really powerful voice that'll amplify your own, getting in front of those organizations, and then hopefully securing and winning the endorsements. Those are a huge opportunity to put yourself in the driver's seat in a campaign, build momentum, and really put yourself in a position to have success.
Yeah, I want to elevate some good chatter from the chat here. Ryan Winkle shares doors, doors, doors. It's how I won in 2016. I knocked on 10,000 doors personally, which is very admirable. Bill Curlin sort of +1 to that, saying voters will remember a candidate that they personally have met. Doors are one of the common denominators of what I think we're seeing in winning local candidates. Candidates who are able to knock every door in their district once, if not twice, dramatically increase the likelihood that they win their election. That's one of the things that we're finding. And meeting a candidate in person, that goes further than just doors. We're Jared and I frequently are encouraging folks to set up listening tours. So set up times to go and be meeting with people. I think Rich said even just times in coffee shops, sharing your number, sharing your email. That be visible and reachable piece is just so very important. And ultimately comes down to a method of voter contacts. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So please, I want to hear the sort of top tips that you guys have for get out the vote tactics and overall voter mobilization.
Yeah, so this is a screen grab from our screen. If it looks familiar, it's because we pulled it right off of our tools. And it's important, I think, in setting up an effective GOTV plan, first and foremost, to understand what are your goals, and not just what are your goals, for the end of the campaign. Like, let's say you know that you think 10,000 people total are going to vote in any given campaign. It's one thing to say, hey, that's my long-term goal, right? On election day, that's how many votes I need. But how are you advancing that goal each day? We've built this tool to be able to help candidates break it down, because it might even sound overwhelming. Like if you're running for a state legislative office or for a big municipal election, to see, hey, I need to knock on 5,000 doors before the end of the campaign, that could be something that on paper feels overwhelming for people. So leveraging tools like this will actually help you break down your goals into manageable bites and give you a plan for how you're going to go tackle your goal each week, whether that's knocking on doors, making phone calls, generating growth in the form of online impressions. All of these are examples of get out the vote tactics. And when you hear us talk about tactics, I think it's important to understand that first and foremost, there's a really, really large variety of political tactics that are available to candidates at all different scales and sizes of a political campaign. And coming up with the tactic that works for you is based on a few things, but many of these are available, even if you're not running for a big ticket campaign like President of the United States or US Senate. There are, sort of traditional tactics, whether it's advertising in a newspaper or online. Own tactics like hosting events or building out a website and producing collateral online. Social media advertising and social media posting are examples of this. You can do things that are still digital, like search engine optimization is something that is essentially earned. Is how effective are you at driving candidates to your website? And then there are tactics that are things that we're very familiar with at Good Party, things like peer-to-peer texts or phone banks, door knocking. For those candidates who may be on this call who are already running and have already opted into our paid tier of service called Good Party Pro, you may have already inquired about peer-to-peer text messaging. It's a really effective tactic. We've sent out hundreds of thousands of peer-to-peer campaigns, including tens of thousands over the past few days for elections that our team had in Texas. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, many of these tactics were followed by those candidates, and many of them had success. We had 13 candidates this past Saturday run and win elections to school boards and city council seats in the state of Texas, largely by following not all, but a blend of these different options that are available to them. They were hitting doors, they were making text message campaigns, they were driving people to their website, they were advertising in the press or on radio, they were making phone calls. All of these are just different tactics that put you and your campaign in front of voters. And the last thing I would say, and I'm sure Rich would echo it, is that these are not the full scope of tactics that you're looking at that are even available to you. There are plenty of ways to get creative, plenty of ways to empower your volunteers and the people who are supporting you, who maybe have unique talents, to help your campaign build awareness and get out the vote in the final days of an election. So I would encourage people to be open-minded when they're thinking about this. No idea is generally too wacky, though. I know Rob and I have heard some wacky ones, and our role is to help talk about efficacy and make sure that we're doing the thing of getting in front of voters. But there's no limit on creativity and how you can reach people where they are, and that would be where I would encourage candidates to explore and experiment.
I couldn't agree more, and I would just like to say that sort of the get out the vote. It all comes down to those last, with early vote, like the last 2 weeks of early vote and GOTV weekend, and what the Good Party tool that they did on the slide prior to this that Jared showed how they track that stuff. Right, that's what the major parties do really well. Is they're able to track the people that they know are going to identify and push the people out, right? And what the Good Party is doing here is sort of making it easier for first-time independent candidates. And I think that you guys should be thankful for what they're doing, because, again, data and sort of controlling who you're talking to and knowing their metrics on a daily basis is vitally important for GOTV.
Mm. And Jared, in terms of what we offer to help with these tactics, we have a pro level offering where for $10 a month, we actually provide access to the voter file, which is something that typically is pretty cost prohibitive for independent candidates to be able to get their hands on. We do it for as close to free as we possibly can. There are in-kind laws and reporting laws that we have to be up to snuff with, but $10 a month, that's sort of the pro offering. And we also do texting on behalf of our candidates at a sort of flat, rate. They pay just for the connection of the text. We're not taking any sort of profit off of that. That pro level of candidate we have seen move elections at an even stronger rate than our sort of general user base. Is that correct?
It is, and why the pro level tier, I think, have experienced success is largely because they've got access to, and we help them navigate even further, what to do with these tactics and with this information that's contained in a voter file, so that they can really leverage their tactics and their get out the vote opportunities as effectively as possible. And the question that if you have access to one of these files, and again, like Rob said, for $10 a month, where we're confident that that's a value add that is not going to be overly competed with. But when you're using this voter file, or even if you're just leveraging tactics more broadly, the question I encourage people to think about and ask themselves is, well, who is this for? Because different voters consume information differently, right? If you're an older voter, maybe you're reading local newspapers or you're listening to the radio. And versus if you're a young person, maybe you capture your political information on social media like TikTok or Instagram. And those two tactics, they both have value, but for very specific coalitions of voters. And where the voter file comes into play is that it gives you the opportunity to get segmented, right? To think about which tactic is going to work best for this coalition of people, and then help you target them so that you're ensuring that you're being really precise in who you're reaching, and ensuring that each tactic is fitting hand in glove with the groups of people that you think you'll need to win your election.
Yeah. In a moment, I'm going to tee us up to get into question and answer. And so folks, if you have questions that you'd like us to go over in that section, feel free to use the Q&A section button to be able to submit those. We already have 5 built up in the queue there, but while folks are submitting those questions, just as a final thought on get out the vote tactics and voter mobilization, I wanted to ask you guys about some of the more innovative uses that you've either used yourself on campaigns or that you have seen others use. And I'll kind of offer up one of my favorite stories first, in that one of the important things to do, yes, you want to use the traditional tactics. You want to knock every door if you can, but you also want to go where you have the ability to dominate that particular lane of information. I've done some work in New York City before, and I realized that New York, unique in the country, is a town where people are still using cabs and not necessarily using Uber. And those cabs all have small televisions in them, and you can really affordably buy television ads that play in those cabs. So that's a way that not a lot of people think of to advertise and do political advertising. And in the elections in New York City that I've worked in, where I have purchased ad time in those cabs, we've been able to prove that it contributed to our final vote tally in a pretty significant way. So again, it's like thinking, okay, where might my opponent not think to place their messaging? And that can be really innovative. Another favorite story coming out of Good Party's community of candidates, we had a candidate named Tyler who was really successful in his primary effort in Wisconsin. He didn't have the money to do texting. He didn't have a ton of resources. So he actually hopped on the Nextdoor app and sent a message out to everyone in his neighborhood and asked them, if they'd be willing to take coffee with him and hear about why he wanted to run for office. And from that was able to set up a series of house parties that then turned into really successful mobilization events for him and helped him to be able to win his primary. So just examples of thinking out of the box, making more with less, which I think is really what independence needs to do to be successful. So Rich and Jared, and I'll let Rich go first and then Jared. What are some of your favorite tales of innovation from your years in politics?
I don't know. I don't know if I can beat that Nextdoor app thing. That's all.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Incredible. That is a good story. I don't know. I feel like with being sort of, I can remember when just basic digital was unique and new, right? When that first came out, I can remember when Facebook advertising was just sort of the trend back in 2008, 9, 10, right? Like when no one was doing that. So I think as things progress, like the Nextdoor app, you're going to get newer and newer in sort of way to do things, right? But I don't know. I can't beat that Nextdoor app, even if I try. That's fantastic.
Jared, do you have any favorites to share?
I'll give it a try, and I should acknowledge I'm triggered as someone who frequently turns off, and the first thing he does in a New York City taxi where I live is mute the advertisements that come on. So you really hit me close to home there. I have a story. It was one of the more creative opportunities that I was able to participate in several years ago on a statewide campaign I was a part of. We knew that we had a limited budget going into the last day of the election, and we're thinking, well, what could we do to try and just get people as close to the polls as we possibly could? And we actually targeted the individual polling places with the advertisements that you get. That if you're playing a game, like Words with Friends was really big at the time, and if you don't pay for Words with Friends, after every round you get an advertisement. And so we managed to do a 30-second video ad on people's phones while they were in line to vote at the polls, and saw that in the polling places that we placed that net, we did see an uptick in our performance. And it was a cool opportunity where the thinking was, look, we are just trying to experiment and throw things at the wall and see what stick, and try and reach voters where they are. In this case, people were waiting in line. When you wait in line, you're on your phone and you're just waiting to be able to do something and scrolling or playing a game while you wait. And it was an opportunity to capture people right as they were walking into the poll with last minute information about the candidate. And it was an effective one.
I love it. I'll share one more. I've been party to more than one reverse Halloween canvas. Halloween is always right before November elections. And yes, give candy to all of those kids, but give literature to their parents. So that's the easier volunteer actions that I've been a part of. I want to start digging into the Q&A, and guys, keep coming with the Q&A if you've got them. Starting first here, how do you get on an uncontested ballot?
I think the first step is if you're deciding on what office you're running for, doing a little bit of research on the filing information that pertains to each election. Uh, Look and see if anyone else is running for office already and has declared. Again, remember, if 70% of the offices, especially locally, right, are going to be uncontested, your odds of finding one are about 7 in 10. So I think it shouldn't be a challenging thing to find the opportunities. But look to see if there's an incumbent. If an incumbent is running for re-election, oftentimes that even further signals there won't be someone running against him or her. And put your name forward and look at the filing information. If the opportunity is there, turn an uncontested election into a contested seat.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think if you look in places that are predominantly red or predominantly blue, where you have like a city council who, they're up every 2, maybe 4 years, and they're most likely going to be contested in a primary, if that at all, right? And you could win the seat with 1,500 votes. Odds are, if they've run unopposed before, they're going to run unopposed again. The party structure coming from the party of New York, we're really good at making sure our people or those people wouldn't have been opposed. So now I'm on the other side of that battle to try to get people in those races. So yeah, so the organizational structure of the large parties, whether it's in a red place or a blue place, is really good at trying to avoid their incumbents from being challenged, and that's why you have such a high number of uncontested. So that's probably the easiest best. Look at the past history. Look what the purple districts or districts that are going to be competitive are going to drive people to compete. Districts that are a little less are going to be more likely to be unopposed.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Like you are in, as Rich pointed out, like a very heavily entrenched Republican district where a Republican has been running unopposed year after year. Reach out to the local Democratic Party and ask if they're going to run a candidate. And odds are they're going to say no, but they'll tell you if they are, and they'll tell you if they aren't. And that can inform your decision as well. So we have another question here. My biggest question is, how can I successfully run for office against an incumbent if I haven't been politically active before? I do have past leadership experience.
I don't necessarily think you need to be, right? Like, that's the beauty of the democracy that our founders laid down, right? It's the whole point of being a citizen legislator, right? And as long as you do the work and you have a good message and you go through the stuff using the tools that Jared had talked about, or following sort of the campaign plans that we're trying to lay out, you go door to door and introduce yourself to 2,500 people in a small race. I mean, you can go up against an incumbent, right? Especially if that incumbent's not doing anything. Most people, then long-term incumbents, win, but people aren't necessarily happy, right? Not to say that, the United States House of Representatives has an approval rating of 14%, but everyone loves their member, right? But so it's right, like, people have a dystopian understanding of what's going on. So even if they're a long-term entrenched incumbent, there are going to be people that are unhappy, but they just have nowhere to go. So go out there, do the doors, meet the people, tell them how you're going to better your community, and you're going to get traction really quick.
I agree, Rich, and I would add, when we've talked to folks in the past who flagged this as a concern, we point out that, yeah, there are advantages to running as an incumbent. There are also vulnerabilities and liabilities that come with running as an incumbent. You generally have a record that you have to stand up against, and what we tell people who are considering challenging an incumbent, or even who are running just generally, is that elections are ultimately about a choice and a question that you're asking voters to make or to answer, which is, are you happy with the way things are going in your community? And if you are, you're probably likely to keep things the way they are by supporting an incumbent. Or do you want to change things for a better and brighter future in a different direction? And like Rich pointed out, I think a lot of people look at the state of our government and our political system and are not happy with what they're seeing. And so it's up to the candidate to be able to get out and do the work and help amplify their message and do the things that a good candidate needs to do, like knocking on doors, like posting online and building community and engaging volunteers. But ultimately, it's also about helping frame that choice And I think that you'll find that many people in communities across the country, we've seen it already many times this year, are eager to turn the chapter on the state of affairs that we currently find ourselves in. And that's bad news if you're an incumbent, because that's a tough river to be swimming up against.
I would add that one of my favorite exercises to run any candidate through, and one that Jared and I have built into Good Party's tools, is a Tully message box, where essentially you chart out, yes, what is your opponent going to say about you, and what might you say about your opponent, but also what are you going to say about you? So while your opponent might point to you and say, this person has no experience, that's not how you would frame it. You would say, I'm a political outsider, right? I'm coming with fresh perspectives. So there's a way to lean in and own and even diffuse, sort of inoculate voters against the idea that your lack of experience is a bad thing, right? It's actually a good thing, because if folks are unsatisfied with the way things have been going locally, you represent that change that Jared is talking about. So another approach at that. David Hinckley asks, he says, I've got a limited budget and there are a million possible ways to spend it. What kind of expenditures do you think get the most bang for your buck? And what are some spending categories that you tend to avoid? And I'm going to assume he means this in the context of a local election.
Yeah, again, it would depend on, you know, what size electorate you're dealing with. The smaller the electorate, the less likely you're going to need a larger staff, right? You can do a lot with volunteers. That'll help your budget. The smaller race, you probably don't need television, which is what everyone sort of thinks of as when political campaigning. I think like I said, you're always against the clock. So whatever budget you do create, you work it back from election day and move it to the today. And I think any dollar that you get should be focused on, direct voter contact, whether it's paid phone calls, paid text messages, digital advertising direct to voters, right? Any sort of direct voter contact is key. Anything else then becomes gravy, right? Like radio would be the next thing level, right? So in a congressional campaign or even a state senate campaign, your staff alone is a giant chunk of your fundraising. But the lower you go down, you can get some volunteers to run your campaign. You can use the tools of the Good Party to take some help away, and so you can put that money into sort of direct voter contact, the literature that allows you to people to go directly to your website, right? And stuff like that. That would be my sort of how you would deal with that at the local level.
Jared, before you jump in with your answer, David did share it's a state senate race in this particular. That shifts either of your offerings at all.
Well, yeah, then I think yes, because it is a state senate race. You're going to need at least one, maybe two people part-time doing the work. Once you get to that level, there's one thing you can't do, and you can't do it all by yourself, right? You can't be the person that is, going to the picnics, so working with the Good Party tools, and also, putting up signs. I've been part of those campaigns, and it never turns out well, because you need someone to lean on, and a good campaign staff is very important. So I would add that in. Again, TV is always an option. In bigger campaigns, what ends up happening is TV becomes the fulcrum, and voter contact is the first thing to get kicked. I'm a firm believer that should be the reverse, but that's just how I view the world. But yeah, if you're at a sub like that, you should try to figure out how you can get one, maybe a 1.5, one full-time, one part-time staff, or 2 times, because you're going to need it. You're running in at a level of that you're going to need people to take care of things that you can't necessarily take care of, because there's 1,000 other things you got going on.
Yeah, I would echo Rich. We're aligned in the philosophy that voter contact has always got to be the priority, even if you are running a ballot, you're running for races where maybe your operations budget might be up to snuff. I agree, and I would hopefully plug, right, that the folks at Forward who are building volunteers and our community of volunteers that we're building and cultivating oftentimes can plug in and help get involved in these campaigns to the point where you don't feel the pressure to have to hire or retain campaign staff who are going to eat into your budget. I agree that it's important to have people who can be relied upon to produce, certain and fulfill certain responsibilities and roles that exist in the campaign trail. But leveraging volunteers is a huge, huge way to be able to effectively run a campaign and also prioritize ultimately the thing that's going to make the difference in an election, which is, are you getting in front of the voters that you need to get in front of? And in terms of sort of how do you allocate the budget, I would reiterate that there's not necessarily a one size fits all recipe. Even for a state Senate seat in the same state, multiple Senate seats may have different audiences and different constituents. And so what I would encourage you or other folks who are in this position where you maybe have some resource and you're thinking, how do I effectively spend the money I need to spend to reach the voters I need to reach, is to take a look at your community, make some assumptions on where you think these people are going to be most effectively reached, and then experiment, whether it's on radio or in traditional press, on social media, and just make sure that you're gauging if it's successful or not by measuring, is it having an impact on your ability to grow your campaign?
So William asks, how can independents running during this presidential election leverage momentum at the local level?
Ooh, I love this question. I think I can jump in here, William.
Sure.
So I think that the presidential campaign, specifically this year, is creating an opening that I think our organization and Forward have certainly seen, acknowledging that while it's creating an environment for a race that we're not participating in, right? Neither of our organizations is participating in the presidential election or supporting presidential candidates. There is a huge trickle down effect because that is what people are obviously focused on and they're looking up to. And I think what you see is a historical shift in people's attitudes where they're looking at the two choices that are being offered for president. And people are saying, well, there has to be a better alternative to the choice that we're being forced to make. This isn't new in 2024. I think people going back to 2020, the largest population of people in this country who were eligible to participate were the people who actively didn't vote in the 2020 election, which means 83 million people across the country who were eligible to vote in down ballot races as well as the presidential election didn't participate. And that creates an opportunity. And I think that number will be larger this year. I think people are becoming more and more frustrated with the parties for, again, forcing us to make a choice between, at most, the lesser of two evils, and are looking for people at the local level who will get up and speak to those concerns that they have, which is we have to be able to offer better alternatives who are independent of the two major political parties, who are powered by people instead of the big corporate interests or the moneyed interests that have corrupted our political system, and are committed to pro-democracy principles that are also inherently anti-corruption principles. It seems like every other week a new political figure in this country is getting busted for blatant corruption. And even if they aren't, there's plenty of yeah, but that are going on where people are seeing the pay-to-play environment that has been created by this two-party system. And so I think it creates an opportunity for people on this call to speak to those concerns, to say, look, I'm not running for president, I'm running for city council, but here are the values that I have. Here's why it's so important that starting this year, we chart a new course by electing people who are running against the system that we have.
Great. Robert Mallard asks, any advice for running for a seat that opened up because someone died in office?
Yeah, I think it would depend on your state by state rules. I mean, if they're still within their term and depending on how close the election, there could be a special election. And then each state is usually different on how they control the special. The laws, all in let's say New York, only the parties get to choose the candidates that are allowed to be in the special, the two major parties. So look, there's always an opportunity if you can figure out what ballot access looks like in that situation. I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, I feel bad for the person that passed away. That's awful, but I feel that, you know, it opens up a seat and people are going to be looking for new representation, and you might as well put your name on the ballot if you can get it on there.
Yeah, I can speak to hopefully the situation isn't someone passed away, but let's say there's a vacancy that's created. And in many situations, whether it's because someone passed or someone retired or someone got elected to a different position, right, that triggers a vacancy. What we're essentially talking about is the person who is holding the office is no longer running for that election again, and potentially there is going to be a special election, is what it's called, when someone is running to fill the unexpired term of this person. So you can imagine, let's say someone's elected to a 2-year office and a vacancy is created in the first 6 months. That seat can't just be empty for 18 months. They have an election to elect somebody to fill the remaining 18 months of the term. And oftentimes that creates potentially two opportunities. That can be an opportunity for a candidate to run in the special election and then in the upcoming regular election. And it's an opportunity for candidates to essentially do a test run. And if you're successful, amazing, you have an opportunity to now run as an incumbent in the normal, regularly scheduled election. But even if you run in a special and you're unsuccessful, you've created something to build off of. And this is true even not if you are running in a special election, but if you run in 2020 and maybe you weren't successful, you could run in 2022. And if you weren't successful then, hopefully you can run in 2024 and build off of the 2 years of experience that you've acquired. So all of this is to say, these are opportunities. You know, I encourage candidates not to look at elections in a vacuum. You know, it's important. Obviously, everyone wants to win their election, but if you're running for an election and you get close, hopefully that's an opportunity to try again and leverage the experience and the things that you did right, learn from the things that maybe you wished you could do differently, and have success on your second try.
All really great insights to, I think, a tricky situation for anyone running. The only thing that I would add is I think that oftentimes in a traditional candidate campaign, there's a healthy bit of contrasting that's done. And I think in the context of running against a vacant seat, you really have to lean into your vision and the policies that you would champion, even more so than if there was someone to actually campaign against. So that would be the final piece that I add there. Jared, I think this is a question that either you or I can answer. So will forward aligned Democrats or Republicans be able to utilize the Good Party toolkit? How does the Good Party pledge impact this? And I'll take first stab at it and say that we are happy to work with independents because we believe that that is a underserved market. And that's one of the ways that we work with traditional forward party candidates really well, because they're folks who are running outside of that Republican or Democrat two-party system. We are not going to offer our tools to folks who are actively paying membership dues or fundraising or engaged in the political fundraising machine with the Democrats or the Republicans, whether they're forward-leaning Dems or forward-leaning Republicans. And that is simply out of a place of there are tools for those people already. And for us to be an organization that offers our tools completely for free or as close to free as possible, we have to draw the line somewhere. And for us, it is that we want to offer it to people who aren't already getting that level of service from one of the two parties. So in that case, a forward aligned Democrat or forward aligned Republican, our hope is that we would be able to have our tools be a strong enough sway for them to jump fully into the forward vote and be like an all forward candidate. Because we think that if we can get folks out of the two parties, we have a better chance of putting an end to the two-party duopoly altogether.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is it's an opportunity. You know, we understand that disaffiliating from a political party is a tough thing, especially if maybe you're already an office holder or you're someone who feels deeply connected to one party over the other. And for us, we're trying to build the infrastructure to show those candidates, especially, that running without the support of the Democratic or Republican parties is possible. And the hope is in building partnerships as Rich slowly peels the layers of the onion back and can get the candidates to go from Democrat to forward Democrat or Republican to forward Republican, we'll be there as a selling point if and when they're ready to fully shed the label and embrace being a forward candidate and hopefully a good party candidate as well.
A question from Andrew in here who says, hi there, I'm working with Andrew Yang in the Forward Party, and we're currently exploring new tech to help us compete against the establishment parties. Can you give some insight as to how to build the best digital-based communities, including which tools and platforms do you recommend? Does Good Party platform offer any tools to help volunteers communicate and organize with other volunteers using your platform, i.e. event creation, calendars, peer-to-peer chat, messaging, etc.? This is a question near and dear to my heart. And that is because we do. Our Discord is probably the main space that we operate out of. We like Discord both because it is a very powerful and free platform. And it is also a platform that helps us to connect with 18 to 35-year-old voters, which represent the largest voting bloc in the country as of this year, and who overwhelmingly identify as independent. A majority of Americans identify as independent. The 18 to 35-year-old age block at an even higher clip identify as independent. So I did drop a link to our Discord where our volunteers meet if you want to check out the way that we're using it and borrow from it, join it, help us with it. We organize regular text banking to help our candidates out of that space. It's also where we are doing candidate trainings on a monthly basis. So I thank you for that question to plug something I had hoped to plug anyways. And then by way of additional tools and platforms, we lean in on social media as a sort of top of funnel tool at Good Party, and I think Forward Party much the same. It is the attention marketplace, and it is the place that most folks will find out about our organizations. Is probably how most folks found out that we were doing this call. So building a robust social media, whether you're a candidate or an organization that works with them, is, it's a must-have in today's day and age. And then finally, we are developing more volunteer management tools in the coming months. We are a couple weeks away from releasing our door knocking tool, which will make it easier to assign turf to volunteers and send them out to do the really important work of voter contact on the behalf of the campaigns that are using Good Party Pro. So more to come on that. And the easiest way to stay in touch is to sign up for our email list at goodparty.org. The last really important, I have an eye on time and I know that we're going to have to wrap up soon. The last question that I've seen pop up a lot, especially I think because of the disproportionate rules around getting on the statewide ballot in Arizona, is do either of your organizations help with signature gathering, and any advice for the candidates who, in Arizona, you have to collect 3 times as many signatures to get on the ballot at the statewide level than if you are in one of the parties. And I'll have that be the last question that we close on here.
Like I said, depending on which state, we do have like I said, we have a large volunteer base here at the Forward Party that we would have to circle back and try to see if we can help you. My recommendation to any candidate would, you start with friends and family, you start with whatever your volunteer base looks like to start. You got to figure out how you're going to do to get out there. And then budgetarily, you could figure out there are a number of different organizations that help do that, but that is more of a budget question than not. So I would say, look, you look for your volunteers. You can you look to organizations like ours to help provide volunteers. You look to your own sort of base of volunteers, and then finally, if you need to or had the budget, there are a number of different organizations that are either nonpartisan that do sort of the signature gathering.
Excellent. Jared, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I totally understand the concern first and foremost. I mean, when we talked at the beginning of this conversation, we spoke about how oftentimes the system is intentionally confusing and disruptive and discriminatory even to candidates who are running without a party label next to their name. And I think of no greater example of that than ballot access, which in Arizona, as we just highlighted, right? The rules are much more difficult for independent candidates to be able to get on the ballot. So I think it requires a degree of organization. Hopefully there are groups that are local, whether it's the local Forward Party chapter or even in our Discord, if there are folks who are willing to engage and help circulate a petition that can plug in and form what is required to do this is essentially an organization. And then it comes down to circulating the petition. Though I will say in Arizona, I think it's the only state in the country that I'm aware of that does allow for e-petitioning, which I know it's still difficult, but it is a step in the right direction because I think all of us on this call have thought to ourselves, it seems a little draconian to have to still circulate a wet signature on a clipboard to be able to get on the ballot. Either way, whether it's electronic or pen and paper, it requires getting in front of voters. And if you're doing it the old-fashioned way, getting in front of people in volume is the secret, in my opinion. Going to parks or camping out in front of post offices, grocery stores. I've petitioned. I remember very vividly forming a literal human wall with members of my campaign team with clipboards in front of us outside of Camden Yard Stadium in Baltimore to catch people on their way into an Orioles game. Get creative. Get in front of as many people as you can where they are, and then make an ask and say, hey, are you willing to support a competitive alternative to the two parties on your ballot this year? And stress, you're not asking for their vote. Their signature does not commit them to supporting any one candidate in the race. You're just offering an alternative to the two parties and asking for a chance to make your case to the voters later.
All right. Well, I'd like to bring us in for a landing here. I shared some links in the chat for how folks can follow up with Good Party. We would love to walk anyone who attended this call through a demo, and we have a link there where you can book time directly to Jared's calendar and be walked through a demo. We also offer a longer 3-part course called Good Part Academy, where we go into depth of this kind of similar criteria, but a little deeper than the 101 level that we did here tonight. And then finally, I linked to the Discord that I had mentioned as well. So we hope that all of you will either book a demo or join our Discord community to stay in touch. And Rich, how should folks stay in touch with Forward Party and more importantly with you?
Yeah, you could look at, go to our webpage at theforwardparty.com, and there's a lot of different links and you can go along. If you're interested in becoming a forward candidate, there's a whole sign up intake form on there. Once you do that, we'll get you in touch with the state leads. My email is rich@forwardparty.com. Feel free to reach out to me. And if you want any questions, ask about becoming a forward candidate, and we can go from there.
Awesome.
And Robin and Jared, thank you so very much for having us, the Forward team with you.
Rich. And we will be sending the recording around to everyone who signed up and attended, as well as some follow-up links for people. That Discord link will be in that email as well, Keone, but it is just above in the chat. It is discord.gg/goodparty. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope that you all benefited from the training tonight, and we look forward to chatting with you all down the road. Good luck, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. Bye, all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.